Wait, that is weird. Starship 26 static fire, but it is not what you think. How does the Raptor engine work? New information regarding the second launch. Is the FAA bad for the space industry? My name is Felix, welcome to What About It. Let's dive right in. Starship updates. Lots of important questions to tackle, only SpaceX today. Let's start this one off with some spectacular news. It is ignition time. Shortly after noon on October 18th, Highway 4 and Boca Chica Beach were closed, signaling that some action was about to take place. Once the pad was cleared for the safety of SpaceX's workers, the suborbital tank farm sprung to life. Soon after, Ship 26 began to show that unmistakable frost line, a sign that it was being loaded with propellant. Roughly 60 minutes in, one of the Raptors abruptly released a bunch of gas, and seconds later, for a brief moment, flames illuminated Test Pad B. Some of you might have noticed that this test didn't resemble a typical static fire, did it? Spot on! This wasn't a static fire, but didn't appear to be a spin prime test either. So what was it then? Is a pre-burner test ringing a bell? No? Then let me explain. To understand what a pre-burner is and how to test it, we first have to break down the mechanics of the Raptor engine. The saying goes, it is not rocket science, yet in this context it genuinely is, so pay close attention. In the vast world of rocketry, engines come in diverse forms. The simplest one might be a gas-filled storage tank equipped with a nozzle and a valve. We call that cold gas thrusters, yet it is still a rocket engine in essence. For the more complicated ones, we have monopropellant engines, solid rocket motors, hybrid engines, and the list goes on. However, for this video, we have to focus on liquid bipropellant engines, like SpaceX's Raptor. As the name implies, these engines use a duo of propellants to generate thrust. The first one serves as the fuel source. This could range from hydrogen, as in the case of SLS, or RP-1 used by Falcon 9, to methane, the choice for Starship. Most of the time on our home planet, fuel is all you need to power a car or a jet engine. These engines don't require an extra oxidizer tank, they simply draw oxygen from the ambient air. When was the last time you filled your liquid oxygen tank on your car, right? Down here there is an abundance of oxygen. However, in the vast expanse of space where oxygen is absent, rockets demand an added ingredient, an oxidizer. Liquid oxygen, or LOX, often fills this role in aerospace applications. Now here's where things get complicated. With a solid rocket motor, the procedure is somewhat straightforward. Mix the fuel and oxidizer, pour it into a casing, fit a nozzle at the end, and voila, you have a functional engine. To use it, you simply ignite the mixture and then pray that you calculated everything correctly and didn't accidentally create a big stick of dynamite. Liquid rocket engines, though, present a more complex challenge. They have to separate the two propellants as they are stored at different temperatures. Besides, putting these propellants in a single tank is basically begging for a massive explosion. Instead, both the fuel and the oxidizer have their own tanks, and the engine itself can decide how much of each propellant it needs to sustain combustion. While it may sound easy, believe me, this is an incredibly hard task to accomplish. Every rocket engine does it a bit different. It's what we call the power cycle. Today, our focus is on staged combustion, or the closed power cycle. To transfer propellant from a tank, you need a pump and a turbine. These two together create a turbo pump. However, a challenge arises. For the turbopump to do its job, its turbine must rotate, and maintaining this rotation is the tricky part. Enter the pre-burner. It might sound mysterious at first, but think of it as a small rocket engine in itself. It gets just a little more complicated, stay with me, it's worth it. There are two commonly used types of pre-burners, oxygen-rich and fuel-rich. So what sets them apart? An oxygen-rich pre-burner receives oxidizer from the tank and mixes it with a tiny bit of fuel. This mixture is ignited and whatever is left goes to the main combustion chamber. Given the oxidizer's dominance over the fuel in this scenario, most of it remains unburned. However, the generated heat turns that liquid oxygen into hot gas, which then travels to the main chamber. On the other hand, the fuel-rich pre-burner operates similarly, but here fuel takes the center stage with just a trace of oxidizer present. That also explains why the propellant that technically was burned once can be combusted again at the engine's final stage. There is not enough oxidizer to make all the fuel burn up. The ignition at the preburner generates pressure needed to sustain the spin of the turbopump, in return bringing more propellant into the engine. The closed cycle part is actually quite genius, as it reuses propellant from the preburner, which improves the engine's efficiency. For example, the RS-25 engine, integral to the Space Shuttle and SLS, employs fuel-rich preburners. In contrast, the iconic Russian RD-180 engine, a staple in Atlas rockets, opted for oxygen-rich preburners. Both types come with their upsides and downsides, but it's a bit beyond the scope of this video. So which one do you think is used by Raptor? The fuel-rich burner or the oxygen-rich one? The answer might surprise you, it uses both. That is where the legendary term full-flow staged combustion comes from. It's the most unique feature of the Raptor engine. Rather than sticking with a single type of preburner, the Raptor pioneers an approach only a select few prototype engines have ventured into. It boasts two preburners, one oxygen-rich and the other one is fuel-rich. While it's really difficult to design such an engine, mastering the full flow offers unparalleled benefits. In such a setup, both the oxygen and methane undergo heating, transitioning from liquid to hot gas. When they meet in the main combustion chamber, their gaseous state allows for seamless mixing, enhancing efficiency. Plus, igniting two gases is way simpler than fighting with a mixture of gas and liquid. Delving deeper into the full flow combustion cycle's merits reveals that the preburners operate at substantially cooler temperatures. This allows for better reusability, but can also be used to squeeze even more performance out of the engine. Raptor is very efficient. Now for the eagle-eyed among you, a pressing question might come up. The pumps require propellant to spin. However, to get the propellant, the pumps need to spin first. Isn't that a paradox, Felix? On the face of it, absolutely. The solution lies in kick-starting the turbopumps. Once they receive that initial spin, the combustion becomes self-sustainable, sort of like a starter in a car. To our understanding, Starship relies on helium to rev up its engines, which is stored in the COPV tanks within both the booster and the ship. Armed with the knowledge of preburners, the purpose of Ship 26's latest test should be clearer to you. It allowed for SpaceX to check the integral parts of the Raptor without actually igniting it. The fiery spectacle beneath the ship seconds after the test stems from the heated gases originating from the preburners. These gases are highly combustible, so even the smallest spark can result in a fireball. But don't worry, we've seen this previously and there is no cause for alarm. The only questions that remain are why revert to preburner tests and why was it a single engine only? To understand the reasoning behind this, let's fast forward 2 days to October 20th. Once again, the road to Starbase was closed and Ship 26 underwent another propellant fueling. Shortly after 3 p.m. Texas time, the prototype thundered to life, but not using all of its 6 engines as anticipated. Instead, it only fired a single engine, the very one that had undergone the preburner test. Such a change raised some eyebrows. For several months now, SpaceX has been flawlessly executing the 6-engine static fire. Why the sudden modification? Thankfully, in their typical style, SpaceX didn't leave us in the dark for long. Shortly after the test, they not only graced us with some captivating footage, but also shed light on the rationale behind this static fire. I have to admit it was quite unexpected. Turns out this wasn't your typical static fire. This was a simulation of an engine startup during a deorbit burn. While rockets rely on engines to ascend into orbit, going back is also a challenge. You could of course patiently wait until the orbit decay brings you back, but depending on orbit parameters, this might span mere hours or extend to several decades. Alternatively, you can pivot your rocket 180 degrees and reignite your engines. Basically, you pull the brakes. This maneuver, when executed correctly, will lower your orbit so much that the rocket dives into the atmosphere. Atmospheric re-entry begins, slowing the rocket down even further. Given that the test used a single Raptor engine, the earlier preburner test is starting to make more sense. Such a test provides way more information compared to a mere spin prime. The issue is that with all 6 engines, the buildup of gases could potentially result in an event reminiscent of the mishap during Booster 7's spin prime. And we all know how much that delayed everything. Perhaps that is why from Ship 24 onward, SpaceX has stopped pre-burner tests, narrowing their focus on spin primes and static fires. At the time of making this video, SPM transporters and a ship stand were moved close to Ship 26. SpaceX is getting ready to move it. The prototype might have already left the launch site when you're watching this. Such a weird test dramatically changes our perspective on the purpose of this prototype. Will it even be used for any flights? What's your take on this? Will Ship 26 go to orbit? Leave your opinions in the comments. I do read them. For example, in the comment section for the last episode, some of our viewers hypothesized that the area next to the suborbital pads might not be a parking space, but rather a water collection pond. It is an exciting thought. However, our latest flyover, massive thanks to Redline Helicopter, debunks this theory. John was in the air just minutes before the pre-burner test. In fact, the area has recently received outlines showing where the parking spaces are. Want to book your own ride at Starbase and see these things in person, or just enjoy one of the coolest views in the world? Go to redlineheli.com/Felix. You will find the link in the description. I highly recommend it. Let's now move to the second orbital Starship, as we have some fresh details regarding both the launch and the overall permitting process in the aerospace sector. You might recall that on October 17th, Ship 25 was taken down after a mere day atop Booster 9. Such a move naturally sparked some concern. Speculations ranged from potential misalignment of the ship QD arm to possible internal Starship damage. Things got even more heated when SpaceX workers started inspecting both vehicles, even bringing an X-ray machine to analyze the welds. That didn't look good. However, by October 20th, tensions eased as Ship 25 was once again stacked on top of Super Heavy Booster 9. This time, the quick disconnect arm was swiftly attached to the prototype without any issues. The specifics of what exactly went wrong the last time remain a mystery. We do know, however, what is waiting next for the second orbital Starship. As with any stacking, SpaceX published some outstanding shots on their X profile that also included information that they will conduct a final launch rehearsal. That officially confirms that we should expect a wet dress rehearsal soon. A final rehearsal of everything but the ignition. But when? I get you. After all, we want to see a second launch, right? Perhaps by the time you're watching this, it already happened. All thanks to a really weird road closure for October 22nd. Instead of the typical closure for non-flight testing activities, this time the document stated, "This closure is necessary based on unique circumstances involving testing of 2 separate Starships in preparations for upcoming launch approvals." It is definitely a first. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding, and by 2 Starships they mean ship and booster combo, or Ship 26 is back in the race? SpaceX also stated that additional testing would be needed before a full launch rehearsal can commence. We don't know how to predict the future yet, but you probably already know what happened. My money is, or was, on a partial fill for Sunday. We'll show the footage here if anything interesting happened. A backup road closure is in place for the day this video is released, so October 24th. After the wet dress rehearsal, the last step remaining is the actual launch. Currently, the earliest launch date is still November 1st, as outlined in the recent notice for mariners. Yet, the paperwork surrounding this launch is incredibly complex and could extend well beyond this date. The Federal Aviation Administration recently revealed that on October 5th, the Fish and Wildlife Services received the final biological assessment. This date marked the start of a 30-day review period. Now be very strong, my friends. Once this phase is completed, the FWS will have an additional 135-day-long window to release their opinion on the matter. Come on! In the absolute worst case scenario, the Fish and Wildlife guys can use that time to the fullest or even extend it in extreme cases. That would push the earliest possible launch date to March 18th, 2024. Personally, I don't think it is going to take this long. The wording in the closure and the recent sightings of Fish and Wildlife Services representatives at Starbase suggests that the license is almost there. What do you think? Is there a chance for the second launch in 2023? Place your bets in the comments. Even if things get delayed, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, as the US government recently held a session where private human spaceflight industry players, SpaceX, Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic, asked for an increase in resources for the FAA. But before I tell you all about it, here is a little task for you. YouTube might have unsubscribed you without your knowledge. I am not kidding, they seem to do this frequently. Very important task, double check that subscribe button so that you don't miss our updates. While you're checking, hit the like button and consider becoming a wise supporter for exclusive SpaceX updates. Everyone gets the same perks regardless of your contribution. With it, you get access to daily Starbase photo galleries, now including aerial and ground photos of SpaceX's progress and countless other extras on top. The next flyover will likely happen on the day you watch this episode. No matter how much you decide to give, everyone gets the same supporter content and access. You decide what you want to give. The link to our Patreon page is in the description. Thanks to all the supporters who help fulfill dreams for our team. We can't thank you enough. You rock. Back to the hearing from October 18th. Diving into commerce, science and transportation, the meeting stretched out for a solid 90 minutes. Don't worry though, we sifted through the corporate blah blah to bring you the juicy tidbits. The spotlight was undeniably on the FAA's space subdivision and its struggle to keep pace with the growing launch market. To paint a picture, in 2018, the FAA's space licensing division granted 35 licenses. Fast forward to 2023 and we are looking at 95, with more in the pipeline. As the launch frequency is predicted to hit warp speed in the coming years, possibly rushing to 280 plus licenses by 2028, the licensing process remains buried in cumbersome paperwork and time-consuming protocols. And the worst part is that we've already tried to solve it. Back in 2020, the FAA introduced Part 450, regarded as the next-gen licensing process designed with efficiency in mind. It promised fast and easy licenses compatible with various vehicles and launch re-entry sites. Think of a singular Starship license covering launches from both Starbase and Florida, even allowing for experimental flight testing. All included in a single license. That sounds revolutionary, right? Yet, almost 3 years in, a mere 4 of these licenses have seen the light of day. The verdict from industry giants like SpaceX? The process is confusing and inadvertently slows things down even further. The core of the issue with the system seems to be that too many agencies are involved in the process. Licenses have to traverse a maze, needing nods from the FAA, FCC, NASA, FWS, and other governmental entities. That right there is an acronym overkill. The lack of a streamlined system to synchronize progress between these agencies further adds to the delay. In plain English, they are even having trouble talking to each other, not just to SpaceX and the others. SpaceX, Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin collectively agree that the FAA should concentrate on public safety only, not on classifying mission outcomes as successes or failures. All companies are also pushing for an extension of the learning period deadline. Introduced in the 2004 Commercial Space Launch Amendments Act, or SCLA, the learning period emerged during a time when guidelines for private crewed launches were virtually non-existent. The need for private crew launch capabilities forced its creation. The intended learning period aimed to encourage the growth of the human spaceflight sector without adding too many limiting regulations from the get-go. In essence, if a company could secure written consent from passengers and demonstrate to the FAA that their rocket posed no threat to the public, they'd be greenlit for launch. As it should be, right? The FAA would intervene only if a mishap took place, such as the Spaceship Two disaster or the most recent New Shepard booster incident. Originally, this legislation was slated to expire in 2012, but it's seen multiple extensions since, mainly because the commercial human spaceflight sector was delayed until 2020. After all, sending people to space is a complicated and delicate matter. The current deadline is set for January 1st, 2024. However, we'll hopefully see another extension granting companies additional time to learn more about crewed spaceflight. Honestly, I don't even know why this isn't a permanent thing. While it may appear that the hearing largely revolved around critiquing the FAA's operations, it wasn't just about pointing fingers. SpaceX, for example, offered some interesting suggestions that could simplify these regulatory challenges. The Vice President of Build and Flight Reliability at SpaceX and ex-head of human spaceflight at NASA, William Gerstenmaier, suggested that the space division of the FAA should have double the employees. A bigger workforce should be approved for the licensing division, which appears to be the main bottleneck right now. The licensing process should also be streamlined with fixed timeframes and the ability to submit everything online, not using traditional paperwork. Can you imagine the chaos of having everything printed out on dead trees in 2023? I mean, come on! Furthermore, Gerstenmaier believes that the FAA should possess the power to disregard obsolete regulations that don't compromise public safety. Prioritizing projects of national significance should also be on the cards, allowing for swift reviews, especially when tied to government initiatives. Highlighting this, the SpaceX VP expressed frustration regarding the delayed launch of Starship, an integral component of the Artemis program. According to him, Starship has been flight ready for a month, yet remains grounded due to paperwork. The evolution of rocketry stalls due to bureaucracy.
It's a shame when our hardware is ready to fly and we're not able to go fly because of regulations or re-review. The fact that we can get the launch pad repaired and get it ready to go fly, support a flight, the fact that I can get a vehicle manufactured and ready to go fly, we have 3 or 4 other vehicles also ready to go fly. The pace of our test flight should not be governed by the regulation. We need to be safe, we need to protect the environment, we don't dismiss those, but we need to fly at the fastest pace that we can do hardware development.
There are also rising concerns in the US launch sector, suggesting that the licensing bottleneck might pave the way for countries like China to catch up or even surpass the US in areas such as space constellations or just the sheer mass to orbit. A single day of unnecessary delays can end up meaning months of delays down the line. Perhaps the prospect of a renewed space race might force the US government into action, refining the licensing process. Let's all hope that in the not so distant future, things like environmental reviews and launch licenses will take weeks, not months or even years to be completed. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more awesome content. This is what fuels the algorithm and helps us immensely. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store, a link is in the description, and if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. The Kachoisi Oxygen Sector. I can do this. But before, licenses, the German variant.